serious question. How are we already more than halfway through 2025? That's actually crazy. This year has been so wonderful for so many reasons, but especially for my reading. 2025 has been my best reading year I've ever had, and it's mainly because of a very specific selection of books that I will be sharing with you today. The books that I'm going to be telling you about are the reason why I am not reading good reads, but I'm reading great reads. I have read so many life-changing, thought-provoking, powerful, beautiful, gorgeous books this year, and I can't wait to dedicate a whole video to them and to check in as a way of telling you guys how my mid-year is going, reflecting on the books that I've read, and I would love to know what your favorite books of 2025 are so far, so definitely share that with me in the comments. I love hearing from you, I love getting your recommendations, and I hope that my recommendations will maybe pique your interest and you'll find something that you want to add to your TBR. So without further ado, let's talk about the books that made my reading year the best I've ever had. I did separate it a little bit into categories, so the first book is a nonfiction. It is the only nonfiction on this list. I read a bunch of wonderful nonfiction books this year, but this one was definitely and is still definitely my favorite, and that is Jane Austen at Home by Lucy Worsley. I feel like I have had such a special connection with Jane Austen, especially this year, because I have been going to England to visit my husband. He's doing a master's in England, and we have been going to Bath. We went to the Jane Austen Center. I actually picked up this book in Bath, and I have been doing so much reading and research into Jane Austen, and when I heard about this biography, I was so excited to read it. I adore Lucy Worsley. She's so fantastic. And so this book, she wrote it in a way to introduce the reader to Jane Austen based on the importance of all the different places that Jane lived and how important homes are in the characters' lives of her novels. It's structured so beautifully. I feel like I learned so much about Jane Austen as well as her extended family that I didn't know before. I love Jane Austen. I love learning about authors, and this was such a beautifully written, beautifully constructed biography, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it if it sounds like something that you would enjoy as well. The next 4 books are all literary fiction, and this first one I think about constantly. I loved this book. It has some of the most beautiful writing, beautiful descriptions, and I adored it, and that is The Snow Child by Eowyn Ivey. I loved this book so much, and I truly think about it all the time. This is set in the 1920s in Alaska with this couple who they are basically in the middle of the Alaskan wilderness and they're trying to survive. This couple really wanted to have a child, but they were unable to. And one night, on a whim, they make a snow child out of the first snowfall of the season. And then they go to bed and they wake up and the snow child is kind of crumpled onto the ground, and they see a little girl running around their forest, their land. And it's about how this girl influences their life, how she changes their life, how they change her life, where she came from. This is a beautiful book exploring loneliness, motherhood, parenthood, marriage, so many beautiful things. It has a fairy tale folklore feeling to it, and that makes it just like such a beautiful, enchanting read, especially perfect for the winter time. I loved this. The writing is absolutely exquisite, truly, and the descriptions. Alaska really felt like a character all of its own, and I love when an author makes a setting very important to the story, makes it feel alive. The way that it interacts with the characters is very interesting, and how it demands different things from the characters. I just loved this book so much. When I was talking about it in my videos, so many people commented saying that it's one of their favorite books as well, and now I have 2 more Eowyn Ivey books, and I think she's going to become a new all-time favorite author for me, which is always so exciting. This next book is another one that ripped my heart out. Oh my gosh. I had been meaning to read this book for years, and it was I believe the first pick for the Well Read Book Club, my book club on Fable. if you would like to join, the concept of my book club is to read a different genre every month so that we become well-read and well-rounded readers. And this was the historical fiction pick. I'd been meaning to read it for ages. You guys picked it for the book club, and it has become an all-time favorite book, and that is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. This is a historical fiction novel centering around the family of William Shakespeare. We mainly follow his wife and his 3 children. 2 of them are twins, and one of them is named Hamnet. And it involves the plague, it involves illness, of course, it involves motherhood, parenthood, growing up, coming of age, love, relationships, family. This book explores so many beautiful themes, and it's incredibly heartbreaking the way that Maggie O'Farrell describes the feelings of each character. It's so saturated in emotion, it's so vivid and beautiful. One of my favorite aspects of this book is how William Shakespeare, although he is a very main character in the story, he isn't the main character. The spotlight is really on his wife and his children and how they are coping through the very devastating things that are happening in their family. The writing as well is absolutely breathtaking. I really loved this, and I can't wait to read more from Maggie O'Farrell. If you have other Maggie O'Farrell recommendations, I would love to hear them. And obviously, I would recommend this one, which is why I'm talking about it. This next book is one that I think completely changed the trajectory? Am I saying that correctly? Trajectory, yes, of my reading year, because after reading this book, I read the whole series. It's 4 books, and it made me obsessed with this type of story, and that is My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. So I am from Italian descent. My mom's parents and my dad's parents are all Italian. My mom's family, her mother is from Naples, Italy, and this book is set in Naples, and my grandmother grew up in Naples, and then she met my grandfather, who was from New York, Long Island specifically, and they got married in Italy and then moved to America. My other grandmother is also from Italy as well, but she's not from Naples. My mom's mom is from Naples. So I was really able to relate this story to my family's own experiences and the stories my grandmother always told me while I was growing up. This is about friendship, this is about family, this is about Naples as a place. The Naples, like in The Snow Child, felt like another character. Naples was so alive in this story, and we are following 2 best friends as they grow up. It starts out where we're following them as young girls, and each book they age more and more. This is the first book in a series of 4 books. I read all 4 books. I loved all 4 of them so much, but I'm highlighting the first one in this video. And I can't tell you how much I adored this, because it felt like such an authentic exploration of girlhood, as well as the feelings that you experience when you're young and you become best friends with another girl, and those conflicting feelings on, jealousy and love and competition in a way, and just so many elements that were so relatable. And one thing that I really love that Elena Ferrante does in this novel is explore the challenges of maturing as a girl. She talks about being uncomfortable in her skin when she experiences the changes that come with puberty, and that's something that I could really relate to as well, and I don't think it's something that's very readily talked about, how we feel as we grow up, and those are such intimate experiences, and I think reading that in a story was so powerful. And also just the Italian culture, I loved it so much. This book is quite violent at times, the way that women are treated especially, and the explorations of marriage. It's very complicated and complex and gripping. This story, I never wanted to put it down. From the very first page, I was hooked completely, and I just found it fascinating and beautiful. And I loved it. And of course, like I said, one of my favorite things about this book was that I could relate to it so much because of my Italian heritage. Although we are very American, we are very Italian as well. It's a very interesting kind of mix of cultures, and this book made me want to go to Italy. It made me feel like I was in Italy, and it really made me feel connected to a place that is very special to me. I feel like I'm going to keep repeating myself, but I loved this book and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. This next book is classified as sci-fi, but it's not very sci-fi, and that is Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. This is another book that we read for the Well Read Book Club, and this is a book that every single human being on the planet needs to read to learn empathy and kindness and love and care, and oh my gosh, it's amazing. So we are following a character, Charlie Gordon, who has a very low IQ, and he ends up being involved in this experiment where this lab is enhancing his IQ at a very fast rate. First tested it on a mouse called Algernon, and it's about how Charlie Gordon comes to realize how he has been treated his whole life, why he has been treated that way, and the influence of knowledge and the power that comes with knowledge, the power that comes with intelligence, but also the hardships that come with intelligence, the hardships that come with understanding the people around you, maybe even a little bit too well. What I love so much about this book as well is that it's Charlie writing these logs, almost like it's like written as a logbook where he updates his experience. As his intelligence gets greater and greater, his writing becomes more and more grammatically correct, I would say, and no more spelling mistakes, and that made Charlie's character feel even more real because it felt like you were really reading this actual logbook, and it made such a powerful reading experience, and I loved it, and I really think it's required reading, so if you haven't read it, I really think you should. The next category I want to tell you about is the classics, and this first book, oh my gosh, it has a very special place in my heart from now and forever, and that is The Blue Castle by Ellen Montgomery. This book made me so happy. It made me overjoyed. And I loved every single page, every single moment. I love this book, and I know that so many of you, after I was raving about it, read it yourselves and said that you loved it too, so I'm so glad. I love Ellen Montgomery. She's one of my all-time favorite writers. She wrote the Anne of Green Gables series, which is one of my favorite book series of all time. And this is a standalone novel, and it's one of the only, if not the only, novel that follows an adult main character in Ellen Montgomery's stories. And her name is Valancy Sterling, and she is basically just stepped on by her whole family. She's 29 years old, she's never had many friends, she's never had a boyfriend, and she feels very stuck in her life, and she feels like she can't live. And then something happens where she feels the pressure and the need to break out of the confines that her family has put her in and kind of throw caution to the wind and just say, I'm going to live my life and I don't care what you think. It was so satisfying to see that transformation because we see Valancy being stepped on all the time, and it's so frustrating as a reader because you want to yell at these people for her, and then she eventually comes into her own and gets her own voice, and it's so satisfying. And then what happens next, I don't want to say too much, but the rest of the story is just so wonderful and enjoyable and lovely. This book is loveliness personified. I don't know if it's personified, but it's just pure loveliness. And Valancy is the funniest person, one of the funniest people I have ever met in literature. She reminded me a lot of the wit that Elizabeth Bennet has. She reminded me of a mix of Elizabeth Bennet and Charlotte Lucas from Pride and Prejudice. And if you like the character of Charlotte Lucas and Elizabeth, I think you'll really love Valancy. and I simply adore this book. It's definitely one of my top favorites of the year. This next book was my final Jane Austen novel, completed novel, that I had to read, and I read it this year, also for the Well Read Book Club. As you can see, a lot of the Well Read Book Club books are making it onto this list, which I think shows how we are reading some fantastic books in the Well Read Book Club. So if you want to join, there's a link in the description. It is free to join, and maybe you can also add some best books of 2025 to your list as well. We can read some more amazing books together. Anyway, the book is Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. So this was my final complete novel that I had to read, and I read it, and now I have read all of Jane Austen's complete novels, and that feels incredibly wonderful to say. And now I can't wait to reread them and to read more of her uncompleted works. I haven't read Sanditon yet, and I haven't read Lady Susan. I know that there's other Jane Austen juvenilia as well, so I'm so excited to read all of that. But I really enjoyed Mansfield Park. I know I've heard a lot of mixed things about it. Some people say that it's their least favorite Jane Austen. Some people say it's their favorite. What I loved about this book was how it explored coming of age, how the character of Fanny Price, the main character, felt very different to Jane Austen's other characters, and how the romance kind of felt like a background noise, you know, like it felt like a background feature of the novel. The strength of this story is Fanny's coming of age, her thoughts on her family and the people around her. Something that Jane Austen does obviously so well is explore societal norms and society as a whole and different classes and how people interact with one another and how their interactions say so much about the time period. And I just really enjoyed this book. I enjoyed it a lot more than I was expecting, which is so wonderful. Not that I wasn't expecting to enjoy it, but just after hearing so many mixed things about it, I didn't know how I was going to feel. And I can definitely see why people have some misgivings with it. I can see why it's not some people's favorites, but I can also see why it's other people's favorites. And it's a beautiful story that I think should get a little bit more love. So that's why I'm telling you about it here. Okay. East of Eden by John Steinbeck. It needs no introduction. This is also one of the best books I've ever read. If you want to hear all of my thoughts about it, I uploaded an entire reading vlog where I read, finished, and reviewed this book, so I highly recommend. I'll link it in the cards. I won't say too much about it here, just the fact that it completely changed my life. This book is one of the most beautifully crafted, brilliantly crafted books I've ever read. I love John Steinbeck. He has truly become one of my top favorite authors. I love his writing, I love his descriptions, I love his characters. His characters are so, especially in this book, so incredibly complex. At its core, this is a multi-generational family saga where we are following these different families from Connecticut as well as California. This book is mainly set in California in the Salinas Valley, and it's about so many things. It tackles the concept of good and evil, what makes someone good, what makes someone evil, brotherhood, parent and child relationships. It is all really a reflection on the Cain and Abel story in the Bible, which is actually referenced in this novel, but you don't have to have read the Bible or know about the Cain and Abel story to be able to get so much out of this book. The way that the characters discuss the Cain and Abel story is enough for you to completely grasp the meaning. Doing some background on the Cain and Abel story could definitely give you maybe some deeper meanings, deeper context, but it's definitely not a requirement. And I didn't know too much about the Cain and Abel story, and I really felt like I had a very good understanding and I could see those deeper meanings, those allusions to the story, and the metaphors that he's making in relation to the Cain and Abel story. My point is that you don't have to have read the Bible or to know too much about the Cain and Abel story to really appreciate its influence. It's beautiful, it's perfect. I feel like I haven't done it justice. Definitely watch my reading vlog because I feel like that really captured my reactions really well. It was such a fun vlog and it was so exciting to capture my emotions while I read the book and to share my full thoughts. I wrote a very concise review that's definitely doing the book more justice than the ramble that I have just done just now. But this is definitely one of the best books I've ever read in my whole life, and I can't recommend it enough. This next book is a dystopian and is the only dystopian on this list, and this is a book that I will be thinking about for the rest of my life. I will be wondering about, I will be continuing to ask myself questions about this book and to be creating theories about what I think happened, and this is just one of the most thought-provoking books I've ever read, and that is I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. This is a very slim book, and what it did to me, I will never forgive it for what it did to me. What did it do to me, you may be wondering? It just made my brain liquefy because of how many questions I was asking while reading this book, but in a good way. So this is about a young girl. She is the only young girl in this bunker of 40 women. So this is set in a place, in a time, we don't know where, we don't know when, where these 40 women are kept in a bunker underground and are being watched by men, these guards, but they never speak to the guards, and the main character has never met a man. She only remembers the bunker, and the other 40 women do remember life before it, but they don't really remember too much. And it's this very, very interesting situation, and you don't really know what's going on, they don't really know what's going on, and because the main character has this limitation of never knowing men, not knowing what's going on, the reader naturally has so many questions, just as the main character has so many questions and is trying to figure out what's going on and where she is. She is put into a very interesting situation where we are constantly continuing to ask questions. I was so eager to find out what was happening. I wanted to know more. I wanted to know what was going on. And those are such thrilling stories. I feel like if you're in a reading slump, you should read this book because of how gripping and entertaining and interesting it is. I wouldn't say it's entertaining, but entertaining in terms of it keeps you engaged. It keeps you on the edge of your seat. It keeps you wanting to learn more and know more and keep reading. And I stayed up until, I forgot how early in the morning. It was, I think, like 12:30 or 1 a.m. My husband went to bed and I was like, I can't go to bed right now. I was almost done with the book and I was like, I need to keep reading. So I got into bed. My husband is trying to sleep next to me and I have my phone flashlight shining on the book and I'm just racing to read the end of the novel. And oh my God, it was just so funny. And then I sat there and I finished it and my brain was just going in circles and circles and circles by that ending. This is a fantastic book. I know it's been circulating a lot on the internet recently for very good reason. It's not very often where I read super hyped stories, but this one sounded so intriguing. I really love dystopian literature, and this one is not overhyped. In my opinion. I think this book deserves all the hype it's getting, and if you haven't read it and it sounds interesting to you, I definitely think you should give it a read. The last two books I want to tell you about are both poetry collections from the same poet, and that is Mary Oliver. This is 1,000 Mornings and Blue Horses. I read both of these recently. I love Mary Oliver so much. She feels like my best friend. In a very strange way. And I think it's because I just feel so connected to her on an emotional and spiritual level. I feel like she understands me. When I read her poetry, I feel like I'm reading my own thoughts. And that's a beautiful thing, to feel so connected to someone in that way. It's such a beautiful part of being a reader, and a beautiful part of being a human is being able to deeply connect to other humans and to words in general. These two collections are absolutely gorgeous. If you haven't read any Mary Oliver, I would recommend either one of these. They're both gorgeous, they're both stunning, and Mary Oliver is everybody's poet. I feel like anybody and everybody can read her poetry and enjoy it and get something out of it. You can analyze her poems more deeply, or you can just read them and fully understand them. I can't recommend her poetry enough. So, those are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So really 10, but I included an extra Mary Oliver poetry collection in there. The 11 best books that I've read so far in 2025. These books are the reason why I have had the best reading year of my life, and if that doesn't convince you to read them, then I don't know what will. So I hope that you found something that has piqued your interest, that you maybe want to add to your TBR. I would love to know if you agree with me, if you've read any of these, and of course what books are on your best books of the year so far list. I would love to know what your favorite books of 2025 are currently. I am so excited to keep reading more books. I am so glad that I still have another half of the year to maybe even find 10 more all-time favorites. The idea of that is crazy, another 10 life-changing books, but I would love it if you subscribed to stick around so that you can see all of the other books that I read this year and which ones will become new all-time favorites. I can't wait to keep reading and see what else I find, see what else I want to recommend to you guys, and I am very much looking forward to reading your comments and seeing what you recommend to me, because that's the best thing about making videos and having my channel, is not only recommending books to you, but you recommending books to me. So thank you so much for always recommending me such wonderful books and talking to me, chatting with me, being here. I love each and every one of you so much, and I hope you continue to read wonderful books in the rest of 2025, and I will see you very soon in another video. And as always, happy reading.